Hello, I'm Chris Fowler for Sports Century. Bill Russell was basketball's first truly athletic big man. His astonishing vertical leap allowed him to rebound and block shots with an almost laughable dominance. He perfected the outlet pass, triggering the legendary Boston fast break. Over 13 years in the NBA, Bill Russell won 11 championships, making him the greatest winner in the history of professional sports.
Something in his eyes. He would glower in such a way to inspire confidence in his teammates and fear among his opponents.
The whole game for Bill Russell was a psychological event. He was always testing you.
Psychologically, he knew when you were tired, and he'd watch you bend down and hold your shorts, and he'd whisper something to you like, "Getting to you, that's pretty hot here, isn't it?"
Bill Russell would be introduced, and he would walk out, and he would fold his arms like a Watusi chieftain. This is Mr. Bill Russell. We're here for serious business.
Russ let you know that this was his ground. This is my territory, and you're not going to be allowed in that territory.
Russell driving to the hoop, and he stopped it.
The Boston Celtics are once again the world champions.
Russell was the winningest person I've ever been around. Would do superhuman things when they needed it to be done.
The Celtics were involved in the final stages of the playoffs against the Los Angeles Lakers. After the afternoon game, at about midnight, I got a phone call from Russell saying, "I need you to come and get me." So I jumped in my car and ran over and got him, and he was slumped in this phone booth, and he was bleeding out of his left arm. There was an altercation in the bar. He tried to get between a couple people, and he got accidentally stabbed. A friend of mine was a doctor who sewed him up and kept him in bed all the next day. And then he went out to play the Lakers in the 7th and final game in the center for the Los Angeles Lakers, recognized that there was something wrong with Russell's arm, and he started hitting him on the patch. I watched Russell's eyes, and I'd never seen such sheer ferocity come out, and I knew that that guy was in trouble. Russell proceeded to play this guy right off the court, just carried that team right to the championship right-handed.
In 30 games in which his team faced elimination, including finals in the NCAA tournament, the Olympics, and NBA playoffs, Bill Russell was 28-2. He won with intelligence, intimidation, and an innovative form of denial that foreshadowed the modern game.
He not only controlled the damn backboard completely, but he revolutionized the defensive game as well.
Driving the lane, he lays it up, his block by Russell.
He made shot blocking an art and proved that quickness and finesse and brains was a match for brawn.
As a shot blocker, I played before they kept statistics. Here's a guy that probably averaged over 10 blocks a game.
I'm going down the sideline from the right. I'm going to come in and I'm going to slam it. And I got up and I'm sailing in about a foot above the basket, and I looked up a foot above me. There was Bill Russell.
He had great timing, great quickness. If you didn't see him driving to the hoop, you knew he was going to be there somewhere.
I can't tell you how many layups were missed by individuals that heard footsteps behind them thinking it was Bill Russell swooping in.
He never fouled you. He never went for the ball when it was in your hand. He let you shoot. He just went up with his wrist and flicked it. And he always blocked it to Casey Jones or Sam Jones or Bob Cousy. They were off and running.
He was made for a team sport. He got a high off mastering the geometry and the chemistry of basketball with his teammates and winning.
He was such a proud man that you wanted to be as proud as he was or have it rub off on you.
The loyalty Russell engendered was defined in the 7th game of the 1965 Eastern Division Final.
There's something like 4 seconds left in the game. We inbound the ball, we win the game, knock Philadelphia and Wilt out of the playoffs, and move on to the finals.
Bill Russell took the ball to throw it in bounds, and we were all pressing on him. Russell throws the ball, all of a sudden the ball goes straight down.
He loses the ball off the support. And the ball goes to Philadelphia with 5 seconds left.
As we were leaving the huddle was Russell. He said, will someone please take these goat horns that I'm sprouting off my head?
If the chemistry wasn't exactly right, everybody would have said, well, you're getting the most money, you're getting the most publicity, get yourself off the hook.
Greer's putting the ball on a play. He gets it out deep, and Havlicek steals it. Over the stand goal. Havlicek stole the ball. It's all over.
He had helped us out so many times, and we believed in him so much. There was a communion of spirit and a belief in each other.
It's all over.
Russell was the anvil upon which Red Auerbach hammered out the famous Celtic character. Sometimes it required that he spill his guts.
Russell had this ability to focus on what he was doing. It was so important to him that he became physically ill.
One day we're playing a playoff game, and I said, okay, let's go out and get the job done. And all of a sudden, I realized Russell didn't vomit. So I called the team back. I got him back in the dressing room. I said, all right, sit down. I paced up and back for about 10 seconds. I said, Russell, go vomit. Everybody looked. He got up, went to the head there, and vomited. We came back and we won.
Admired for his intensity in the locker room, Russell often displayed an abrasive attitude towards the public and the press.
He really wasn't very friendly. If you didn't know him, you'd probably say, man, he's the nastiest guy in the world. He didn't smile a lot. He was serious. He gave short answers. If you ask him a question, he felt it was a dumb question. He didn't answer.
You should always say about the media that I would not mind talking to them if they knew what to ask me.
Can you do the job impartially without any racial prejudice in reverse?
Yes.
Bill Russell, one of the really terrible guys I ever encountered in sports. He was just not a day at the beach. Surly, rude. He was a pain in the ass.
How do you feel about going into another 7th game, this time on somebody else's floor?
We've done it before. He held so many people at arm's length that the truth of the matter was that Bill Russell would not have been beloved anywhere. And I suspect it didn't matter to him because he didn't do anything to court that.
In your new role as coach, are you going to be a little more public relations conscious than you were as a player?
No.
He was always going to stand up and say exactly what he thought. If you didn't like it, that was too bad. You couldn't second guess Russell because Russell told you the first guess. Right there, you know.
When you come to write the story about Bill Russell and everything that he has done, it can be encapsulated in one word, and that is defensive. Everything about him, everything about his personality, everything about the way he played basketball spoke to being defensive.
Born in Monroe, Louisiana on February 12, 1934, 20 years before the U.S. Supreme Court ruled against segregation, William Felton Russell was imbued with a family tradition of standing up to the white man. The times hadn't changed since Bill's grandfather held off the Klan one night with a shotgun.
When you're growing up in Louisiana and there's a mob and somebody's gonna kick your daddy's ass or lynch him, you know, if you don't get out the house, and your daddy says, we're not getting out the house. You know, that's it. They're just gonna have to kill us. That was growing up in Alabama and Mississippi and Louisiana and Georgia. It was life and death stuff.
He had a lot of things happen to him in his young lifetime. He had to drive back to Louisiana. They had to sleep in the car because they couldn't find housing, and they weren't allowed to use the bathrooms, and they had to stop and pee beside the road.
Russell read a phrase in his history textbook that the slaves in America were happier and better adjusted here as slaves than they had been in, darkest Africa, where they were cannibals and ate each other in soup. And he said, I can't believe somebody's saying that people are better off as slaves. And he never got over that. And of course, he would go and ask people, how can this be? And he'd never get a satisfactory answer.
Unwilling to tolerate a white-dominated society, Bill's father, Charlie, moved his family west, settling in Oakland, California in 1943. 3 years later, Bill's mother, Katie, died of kidney failure at just 32.
I think that emotional crisis of losing his mother probably set the tone for Russell. That was a family with its center gone, migrating beyond the known world.
Even in high school, he was a little shy. He may have been because he was a tall, gangly type, didn't get invited to dances. He was just as much of a mystery person as he is now.
Standing 6'2", Bill caught the eye of basketball coach George Poles, who created a 16th spot for him on his junior varsity. During the summer, Poles sponsored Russell on a boys club team.
The area we were in, it was a very narrow line between okay and going the wrong way. When George gave Bill money out of his pocket to go to play in the boys club, what he was saying there is, Bill, I want you to go work on your skills so it will help you to be a better basketball player, help you to be a better person.
The first discovery that he had in the court was he wanted to play defense, and he could picture scorers going through a move to the basket and picture him in mirror image stopping it with his left hand blocking the shot.
With his tremendously long arms, you know, he was just unbelievable on the backboard and everything. And we used to tell him, hey, Bill, we take a shot, we miss, you get the ball and get it back out to us, and then we'll start over again.
In his senior year at McClymonds High School, Russell's play encouraged a University of San Francisco alum to successfully lobby for a scholarship for him at the college across the bay.
I went to see George Poles. I said, George, maybe I'm dreaming, but I honestly think this kid, if we could train him, teach him, could be great.
We met that summer in the coach's office, and we were introduced. And he looks down, and I look up, and nice to meet you. And right away, I'm intimidated by his height. I've never been around a guy that tall. And then we became roommates. I didn't speak to the guy for about 6 months. I was shy. So one day I said, you know something, Bill? And all of a sudden he jumped up out of his chair, and he turned around and got right down in front of me and said, yeah, Case.
At 6'9½", Russell led San Francisco to a record 55 straight victories and back-to-back NCAA titles in 1955 and 56.
When I was working for Time and Sports Illustrated, we just constantly sent memos back to New York saying you should think of putting this guy from San Francisco on the cover. And they'd come back and say, yeah, but we got the box score last night. He got 6 points. And we'd say, yeah, but did you notice the other team only got 42?
Well aware of Russell's defensive skills, Boston coach Red Auerbach also knew that the center would be taken early in the 1956 NBA draft. So with the trade brewing with St. Louis, which had the number 2 pick, Auerbach got a backdoor assist from Celtics owner Walter Brown, who made sure that Rochester did not choose Russell with its number 1 selection.
Walter Brown was the owner of the Ice Capade Show, and gave Lester Harrison up in Rochester a guarantee that the Ice Show would go to Rochester for X amount of time, for X amount of years, if they won't take Russell. So knowing that Rochester won't spend the pick on Russell, Red's comfortable making the deal with St. Louis. So basically they got Russell for the Ice Capades.
In a trade for Ed McCauley and Cliff Hagan, Russell went to the Celtics. After leading the U.S. basketball team to an Olympic gold medal in Melbourne, Australia, he had a rookie season in which he averaged 20 rebounds and carried Boston to its first NBA championship.
Prior to Bill coming, we had plenty of people who could score. We just didn't have the size. He didn't have to bring scoring. He brought defense and rebounding to us.
Boston won an unprecedented 9 NBA championships, including 8 straight in Russell's first 10 seasons. But despite his role as the centerpiece in the Celtics dynasty, he was never embraced by a city ethnically divided.
Your body is an incredible
In 1959, Russell touched his ancient roots on a trip to Africa. 4 years later, he went to Mississippi after Medgar Evers had been murdered and conducted a basketball clinic in Jackson, the belly of the beast.
He was an extraordinarily brave guy. A lot of people told him he couldn't go to the funeral, that he would be shot at too. And in fact, they chased his car and they tried to scare him.
A reporter was asking him, why are you coming down here? Russell said, unwavering, I'll do anything I can do to help. Seeing him out of the uniform in Mississippi when they're catching hell down there, they're killing people, and here is the greatest center of all time. And I'd never seen a black athlete in that context. I just remember thinking, that's why that guy is so good, because that guy's got commitment.
Young people saw in Bill Russell exactly what they were looking for, a proud, strong, black athlete who would stand up there and be very, very smart and uncompromising in what he said. I think they found in Bill Russell the antidote for racism.
In an era when most black athletes chose to be silent, Russell stood to his full height. He charged the NBA with racial quotas and pushed for the first black referee.
I first met Muhammad Ali as Cassius Clay sitting in a coffee shop in Cincinnati with Russell. I remember Russell giving him instructions then on how he would conduct himself as a black athlete. He was way out in the forefront of that.
Russell was one of the first so-called Negroes that I ever met in my life who called himself black, when it was not fashionable, when it was insulting to be called black.
He walked around town for years with a cape. Why? He thought it was cool, and he knew it would just make people react. The goatee was a phenomenally hostile statement for the average white person.
He was not out there to make white people feel good about themselves. He said, take me as I am, or don't take me at all.
Are you saying then that there are white people who will never accept Negro people? Is that what you mean?
Sure, there are Negro people that will never accept white people.
He wrote an article one time, the heading at one of the top pages, I hate all white people. And I was sitting in the dressing room reading it. Russ walked in and I says, Russ, this article says you hate all white people. You hate me? He said, Frank, I was misquoted.
Bill Russell was not anti-white, but anybody who did not respect him, black, white, or otherwise, he would drop you like a sack of rotten potatoes.
Russ, in my judgment, used to go through this Jekyll and Hyde transformation. When he was in the unit, he was incredibly outgoing, very clever in terms of humor.
He had a laugh that would blow the roof off a building at times.
Hey, listen, we're close, but we're not funny.
He enjoyed the camaraderie of the team. I mean, we were all like brothers.
And all of a sudden, he'd step outside that unit, get into a train station, a plane terminal, a hotel, and wow, boy, the mask would come down and he would withdraw into his shell.
Well, Russell had little tests he did for people. He didn't trust very many people. We were sitting at a table one night in a restaurant, and he's having a martini, and there was one wonderful old sports writer, a guy named Murray Kramer. Russell didn't know him, and he's drinking his martini, and Kramer's sitting there in the booth, and he says, hey, Murray, taste this. This is a good martini. See if you like it. So Murray grabs it and goes, oh, well, that was terrific. I'll have another, see? From that moment on, Russell loved Murray Kramer till the day he died, because Russell knew that Kramer didn't look on him as a black man. If you would drink out of his glass, the same glass that he drank out of right away without even a thought, then you must be okay.
Despite such exceptions, a wall of white racist behavior isolated Bill Russell and other African Americans on the Celtics.
In some cities, we would hear racist crap walking through the stands. You'd have to walk through in some cities to get to the floor.
Marion, Indiana presented the Celtics with the key to the city, and then we tried to go across the street to a restaurant.
We walk in, there are a lot of chairs there, tables empty, and we were met by someone that said, may we help you? And then, yes, we'd like to have something to eat. She said, I'm sorry, but everything's reserved here. And we said, all these chairs?
Russell went back to his room, got the key to the city, went over to the mayor's house, knocked up, banged on his door, and gave him back his key, telling him what he could do with his key.
He wasn't appreciated here in Boston. The sports writers in Boston, some of them, believe it or not, did not vote for him to be the MVP of an all-star game because they wanted to give it to Jerry Lucas, who was a white guy. And I heard them say that.
Bill Russell was put in his place by the white man who cheered him on nights when he played basketball, and then treated as just another Negro when he wasn't in uniform. Bill Russell has never had a deferential day in his adult life, and he was not about to change anything about himself in order to placate the citizens of Boston.
We benefited from that anger and that intensity because the game would start and everyone with another shirt was Whitey and he'd do it to them.
Bill Russell once stated, you played 2 blacks at home, 3 on the road, and 5 when you got behind.
Russell responded to Northern racism in the same way he had been taught back in Louisiana. He moved his family to Reading, Massachusetts, a predominantly white suburb of Boston.
Why did Russell live in Reading? Because he was a black man and he was going to take black people to Reading and show them that black people could live in Reading, just like ordinary people.
The town threw a big party for him. And he got up and spoke, and he said, "This is where I want to spend the rest of my life." And he started to cry. He went to buy a new house. They started circulating petitions against him in the neighborhood.
When he finally did get a home, they broke in and wrote all sorts of racial slurs on the walls.
Someone smashed all of his trophies. They defecated in my parents' bed.
Robbed his house and left terrible signs there about the fact they didn't want a black family living in Reading.
Every time my dad would go out of town, the raccoons would come and knock over the garbage. And my dad talked to the police and tried to have something done about it. And they said, well, you know, we're not animal control. We can't control the raccoons. And so once my dad applied for a gun permit, the raccoons never came back.
He felt betrayed. He wore his heart on his sleeve for certain incidents, but he'd never show the people that again.
I think that he was in hell in Boston, to the point that Russell said, I didn't play for Boston, I played for the Celtics.
We could have done more to ease his pain and make him feel more comfortable. I should have been much more sensitive to Russell's anguish in those days. We talk...
Bill Russell was the first black athlete in Boston of any prominence. And Bob Cousy was getting all the headlines. So Red became Bill Russell's John the Baptist. Red became the spreader of the gospel.
Red was very, very conscious of the racial issue. On a particular sequence, Cousy's hurt. And they go out on the road, and they all picked it up, said, boy, Cousy's here, we got to do it. And they played 4 or 5, and they won, all of them.
We came back, we go into Boston, the airport. I pick up a paper. Will Cousy play tonight? Boy, what a slap in the face that was.
Not, Celtics finished great road trip, Russell sensational. So Red said to them, listen, Russell is the reason.
It was mutual admiration and arrogance. But with these two people, Red and Russell, it was arrogance with intelligence.
They realized they needed one another. And Russell realized that he was in a perfect situation for him to play basketball, that Red would let him play the game that he wanted to play.
Red knew Russell was going to give you 48 minutes in the court. He was going to absolutely kill himself to win because he wanted to win so much. And therefore, he wasn't going to make great demands on Russell at practice.
He didn't like the practice. Once he'd say to me, can I miss practice tomorrow? I said, why? He said, I'm tired. I said, that's good, don't come.
During practice, Russell was sitting in the stands reading the newspaper. We're just running up and down the court. And Sam Jones is just, I don't understand why Russell still have to practice. So Red called everybody together. He said, I want to tell you guys something. Listen to me very careful. There's 2 sets of rules to this team. One for you guys and one for Bill Russell.
On the way to guiding the Celtics to the 1966 championship in his last season as head coach, Auerbach kept Boston in suspense as to who would be his successor. After the first game of the NBA Finals, Auerbach showed the basketball world how much he valued his star. 19 years after baseball's color barrier was broken, he named Russell the first black head coach of a major American professional sport.
Brad, any final words of advice to the new coach?
Win! At this stage of his career, who can better motivate Bill Russell than Bill Russell?
Bill Russell said about Red Auerbach, he's my friend. And he said, I don't have a whole lot of friends, but he's one of my friends.
The only guy he'll do anything for is Red, and God love him for that. If Red says, I need you here tomorrow, he'll be there.
We were just digging ourselves deeper.
First time I sat down with Russell, He said all sport is a mixture of art and war. If it was all war, it wouldn't have any beauty and it wouldn't have the attraction. If it was all art, it wouldn't have any competition and it'd be in a museum. And he said, the reason it's hard for people to understand my fascination with sports is that the way sports is covered is not a mixture of arts and war, it's just bums and heroes. My relationship with Wilt was more about art and war and not about who's the bum and who's the hero.
I think in the long run, I'll be able to handle myself man-to-man with almost anyone in the league.
Wilt Chamberlain could not be guarded, could not be defended, he could not be thwarted. He was the greatest physical specimen that anybody has ever seen on a basketball court.
The first time we played Wilt destroyed Bill Russell. Put enough fear in Bill Russell's heart that Russell refocused and refocused and refocused every time we played them. So you got the extreme best out of Russell.
Their battles constituted a chapter in the legend of the NBA. Even though Wilt Chamberlain averaged 15 more points in his career, Russell had the edge where it counted. In 8 playoffs, Wilt's team won only once. And in 143 games head-on, Russell won 86-57.
Bill Russell had his number. Every Sunday, it seemed to me, Bill Russell walking off the court winning. Wilt Chamberlain, Goliath, walking off the court losing.
And this guy was 5 or 6 inches bigger than Russell, was 70 pounds heavier than Russell. The only difference between the two of them was the fire in the belly.
In sports, they always say that will overcomes skill. And I think that when you have that kind of clash of titans, it's the will and the mind of Russell that will always dominate. He wanted it more.
But it wasn't a matter of Wilt versus Russell with Bill. He would let Wilt score 50 if we won. The thing that was most important to him was, championships, rings, and winning.
When Chamberlain got $100,000, the first $100,000 contract, Red immediately re-signed Russell for $100,001, just to show that he was a better player than Chamberlain.
Despite the rivalry, Russell and Chamberlain were friends.
When the Celtics would come to town, a lot of people don't realize that Wilt would invite Russell to his house for dinner. And then they'd go to the arena and Russell would try to tear his head off.
My father, if he was in Philadelphia, would often stay with Wilt, and Mrs. Chamberlain, if my dad needed to take a nap, well, go sleep in Wilt's room.
When Wilt came to Boston, we'd eat at Russell's house and go to the game together. We'd fight each other tooth and nail, but after the game, we're friends.
Their bond was tested in Game 7 of the 1969 finals. In Russell's last game as a player, Chamberlain failed to play the last 5 minutes.
Wilt's knee was really paining him, and he just wanted to quiet it down for a couple of minutes, and he came out and he put some ice on it. So when the knee quieted down a little bit, Dipper said to me, "Tell the man I'm ready to go back in." And Van Brennikoff said, "Tell him to hell with him. We don't need him."
Coach Van Brennikoff and Wilt did not get along at all. I think Van Brennikoff would have been thrilled to win a championship with Wilt sitting on the bench.
The Lakers lost 108-106, and in the aftermath, Chamberlain suffered a blow that would hurt long after his knee recovered.
Russell called him a faker. And Russell gave him a little needle after that about, you should have played as a 7th game.
Russell couldn't understand it, that in that moment, when all is on the line, you wouldn't go back in the game. It was a foreign idea to him.
The incident distanced them until they reconciled several years later. When Wilt died of heart failure in October of 1999, few felt the loss more profoundly than Russell.
I'm unspeakably injured by what happened the last few days. This was an integral part of my life and a good friend.
They loved each other. And actually, each one of them made each other. Part of their lives are so intertwined that there's no way you could separate one from the other.
After losing the Eastern Division Finals in his first season as player-coach, Bill Russell led a resurgence. The Celtics won back-to-back titles in 1968 and 69.
The Boston Celtics have done it again.
Then Russell decided he'd had enough.
Bill, this must have been a great win for you. Exactly.
The 35-year-old Russell retired with 11 NBA titles and career averages of 15 points and 23 rebounds.
By sheer force of will, Russell took his team to championships. That is the very definition of a winner, willing to put his own goals behind those of the team. Whatever he had to do, he did it.
After accepting a sizable offer to become general manager and head coach of the Supersonics in 1973, Russell guided them into the playoffs 2 of 4 seasons. But the will that had driven Boston to greatness soon fell asleep in Seattle.
We had a team, a whole bunch of guys that probably didn't live up to his standard of, you know, what basketball should have been played like.
He was so far beyond the players with his verbal approach. Russell was trying to get them to recognize these are steps you take to win a ball game, that they didn't quite understand what he was talking about.
After a stint in the broadcasting booth, Russell returned to the floor in 1987 as head coach of the Sacramento Kings.
He would sit next to me on the plane, and the first thing he said, "Why do you think I have you sitting here?" I was like, well, you know, I guess I'm the new guy and no one wants to sit next to the coach. He's like, no, that's not why. He said, these guys have been here for 4 years in Sacramento, haven't won any games. I don't want you to be mixed in with any losers.
I think Russell really wanted to find a life beyond basketball and felt that basketball was something of a drag and felt pigeonholed by being a coach. People would keep coming to him and saying, be a coach, be my general manager, I'll give you the world. And he would say, I'll be honest with you, I don't think I'm very good. I'm trying to do other things with my life and everybody's sticking me back in basketball. But if you're going to pay me all that money and you're going to look me in the eye and say you understand when I say my heart's not really in it, I'll take your money.
He threw us out of practice because we were boring. He's like, you guys are boring. Get out of practice. This is, I can't stay here. That day-to-day grind, I don't think that he was ready for it.
After a 17-41 start, Russell relinquished his role of coach and withdrew into the front office. By late 1989, Russell was gone from the Kings, fired as vice president of basketball operations. The edgy complexity of Russell's personality was publicly demonstrated in 1975 when he refused his induction into the Basketball Hall of Fame.
Bill Russell did not want to go into the Hall of Fame because he had arrived at an independent conclusion that there should have been quite a few other black players enshrined before him, and his only conclusion was that ignorant whites, whether they're racist or not, had not seen fit to enshrine people whose clear contributions were obvious. Most athletes hunger very badly to be honored. Bill Russell said, do I need a plaque to remind me that I played on the greatest professional basketball team of all time, that I was a 5-time NBA MVP, that I won 11 championships? Do I need any of this to remind myself of who I am? Forget about it. And so Bill Russell said, you can go along and have your silly little Hall of Fame, but you can do it without me.
He's always been a private man and will always be a private man. He listens to a different voice. He listens to his own voice.
You've always felt that perhaps autographs were a little foolish, didn't you?
Yeah, I still think they're a waste of time.
Kids would come up to him and they'd say, Mr. Russell, I'd like to get an autograph. He'd say, son, I don't give autographs, but I'd be happy to shake your hand. He just really believed that you took him at the value as the man and that a handshake was a lot better than a signature.
Can I get your autograph?
I don't sign autographs, young man.
Well, how come?
I just don't believe in it. But for you, I got some old sweat socks out there.
When I was a kid, we came up to him, asked for his autograph, and he very politely explained to us why he did not sign. He shook hands with everyone and talked with all of us, which, let's face it, a lot of guys would rather sign and do none of the other. It was a great thrill.
He would spend 5 minutes telling the person why he wouldn't sign an autograph, when the easiest way out of the whole thing would have been to sign the autograph. The person gets 10 seconds of your time, you give him what he wants, and he goes. He would not sign an autograph for his teammates.
Heinsohn almost got in a fight with him in New York because, you know, Tommy felt embarrassed. He had family people there. Tommy's from Jersey. They're hovering around the locker room, and Tommy needs to get something signed because all the other teammates have signed it, and Russell won't do it.
Tom Sanders is taking a picture around or something, trying to get everybody on the team to sign it.
Everybody signs it, high sats, best, you know, love being, you know, all that, like a high school yearbook gets to Russell. And Russell won't sign it. Sanders says, I'm not some kid in the street, I'm your teammate. And Russell goes exactly the opposite direction. He says, Satch, you know me. You, of all people, shouldn't be presenting this to me.
I've seen him in restaurants when he would refuse an autograph for somebody and say, no, but I'd like to share a cup of coffee with you. And people react in one of two ways. They don't want to have a cup of coffee with him. They just want to get his autograph, so they break into tears, or they sit down and something magic happens. And it's that Bill Russell that's underappreciated.
Russell insisted there was no value in autographs, but if others were willing to pay, he was willing to sign. In 1992, he inked a $2 million 7-year contract with a collectibles firm.
My idea is that my dad's also no dummy when it comes to business, and I think, you know, they're like, there's just so much money here. And so in that context, it's very much his job at that moment to do this task.
Autographs changed. Autographs became valuable. They weren't valuable at one point. And so I think you can almost say that professionally he will sign autographs, casually he won't. And I do think that it's difficult in some respects to resolve that, but I think it's fair.
In 1973, Russell's 16-year marriage to his wife Rose, with whom he had a daughter and 2 sons, ended in divorce. He then had a brief second marriage to a former Miss USA in the late 1970s.
One of the paradoxes in his life is that I think he values family above all else, but he's such a strong figure that in some ways it's hard to be in a family with somebody who is a celebrity and a giant. He feels so strongly for his family now, for his sons and his daughter. He feels that he owes his life to the family relations that he had when he was growing up with his father and his mother.
My father is a voracious reader. Reads a couple newspapers a day, always has magazines and books around. When I was in 6th grade, we were sitting there and eating breakfast, and my dad said, do you think you could read the paper before we have breakfast so we'd have something to talk about over breakfast? So we would talk about whether we should boycott grapes or about the latest crisis. He said to me, I don't know a lot about little girls. The only thing I know is that when you leave my house, you will go out into the world and you'll be able to take care of yourself.
Living near Seattle with his girlfriend, Marilyn Nault, Russell penned his 3rd book, giving us a glimpse of what lies beneath his tough exterior. The pages vibrate with philosophies steeped in the often salty brine of pure honesty.
He was about as good a guy as there was. We had a guy named Howie McHugh, our publicity guy. Howie had a heart attack, was in the hospital, gets a letter, opens the letter, there's no letter in it, there's just a check. It's made out to Bill Russell for $654.22, endorsed to Howie McHugh on the back. No letter, no nothing. Russell heard that Howie was sick and helped him.
Bill took me under his wing when I was acquired by the Celtics. I remember, you know, no place to go for Christmas. Bill was a guy that invited me over, and really nobody else there except Bill and his family and myself for Christmas.
When I was on a college campus up at UMass, he had just given a speech, and he had to drive back to Boston from Amherst. And he spent 4 hours with me. I said, if I can touch somebody's life like that, one-on-one, in my lifetime, I feel as though a debt has been repaid.
We went up to Oakland together. I mean, we really spent an awful lot of time together, the kind of time that writers and athletes don't usually get. And as we were going to the airport, we come to a red light. And Bill turns to me and he says, I'm sorry that we can't be friends. I said, Bill, I thought we were friends. He said, no, we can be acquaintances. We can be friendly. But Frank, we can't be friends. And I think that you really have to work if you're going to be friends. And I was just so touched by the fact that somebody put so much thought into what constituted friendship.
For 13 NBA seasons, Russell led the Celtics like no player before or since. yet a cold silence lay like a New England fog between the city and the man.
When Russell retired, he was saluted as the greatest of them all at the time, but there was never a feeling of warmth. It was nothing like when Cousy retired and people were sobbing and the guys yelling out, "We love you, Coos." It was nothing like Bird getting a night 1 year after he retired. On March 12, 1972, Bill Russell's number was raised. And during the game, an announcement was made to the crowd, and they gave him a great ovation, and he didn't acknowledge it, and it antagonized a lot of people.
When a gala night for him was planned in 1999, Boston's initial chill was predictable.
Boston's famous for payback. It's all about politics and payback, and this was payback. You know, for all these years that you said you didn't like Boston, for all these years you said Boston was not a good place to play and not a good place to live. Now you want to come back and have us buy tickets to watch your uniform go up. We're not going to do it.
Facing the embarrassment of a thin turnout at the Fleet Center, Russell was not above waging a friendly media blitz. In the end, it was well attended, with 12,000 fans, friends, and former players showing up to honor number 6.
I thank you for this. It's very humbling. But
he's 65 years old, and he has softened to the degree that I think he was finally willing to allow people in Boston to honor him. However he felt about the city of Boston, his experience as a Boston Celtic was the most important thing in his life.
One of my dad's favorite quotes is, when he passes away, he's not really sure about heaven. Heaven actually could be a step down for him, because for him, heaven was playing for the Boston Celtics with those guys.
the folks that came to the Garden and the fans, you were part of my life.
He's a great man, this guy. Great emotional things. Smart, tough. The people here didn't understand this man, and they belittled him when he shouldn't have been.
When people referred to him as a basketball player, he almost resented that. His position was always, I'm a total human being, I'm a man who, among other things, plays a great game of basketball.
Those close to Bill see an infectious personality, a deep sense of humor, a strong intellect, and a fierce social conscience. To those shut out by Russell's wall, he seems distant, detached, and uncompromising. The question is, will we ever get to see Bill the way his family and friends do? For Sports Century, I'm Chris Fowler.